In 1459, Mehmed II sent 2 envoys to Wallachia to collect the annual tribute of 10,000 gold ducats. The envoys arrived at Targovishte expecting diplomacy. When they appeared before Vlad, they declined to remove their turbans. Ottoman protocol held that the turban was removed only before God. Vlad asked why they would not bare their heads before a Christian prince. The envoys explained their tradition. Vlad replied that he would help them honor their tradition forever. He had the turbans nailed to their skulls. The story exists in multiple versions. The precise details may never be recoverable, but the message was unmistakable. Vlad was not simply refusing tribute, he was humiliating the Sultan's representatives in a way designed to make negotiation impossible, burning every bridge, closing every door, and daring Mehmed to walk through fire to reach him. Vlad did not wait for retaliation. He struck first. Mehmed sent Hamza Pasha, the Bey of Nicopolis, to stage a diplomatic meeting at the Danube fortress of Georgiou, a trap, with secret orders to seize Vlad and deliver him to Constantinople. But Vlad knew what was coming. He set a counter-ambush, closed a narrow pass on Hamza's 1,000 cavalry, and opened fire with handguns. The entire Ottoman force was destroyed. Hamza was captured alive. Vlad then disguised himself and his men in Ottoman uniforms, rode to Georgiou, ordered the garrison to open the gates in Turkish, and stormed the fortress from within. It was a masterpiece of tactical audacity, and only the beginning. In February 1462, Vlad crossed the frozen Danube and launched a campaign of devastation across Ottoman Bulgaria. For 2 weeks, his forces swept through a corridor roughly 800 kilometers long, killing every Ottoman soldier and Muslim civilian they encountered. In a letter to King Matthias Corvinus, he reported the results with chilling precision, town by town, settlement by settlement. The total, 23,884 killed. Not counting, he noted, those whom we burned in homes or the Turks whose heads were cut by our soldiers. He closed the letter with a single line that transformed it into a declaration of total war. Thus, Your Highness, you must know that I have broken the peace with him. Europe's reaction was euphoric. On Rhodes, the Knights of St. John held a Te Deum and the citizenry feasted. The Genoese of Kaffa credited Vlad with diverting 300 Ottoman ships from an attack on their colony. A Venetian envoy declared that all of Christendom should celebrate. The crusade that popes had called for and no monarch had been willing to fight was being waged by a single Wallachian prince with 30,000 men and an appetite for violence that bordered on the pathological. But the celebration was premature. Vlad had hurt the Ottoman Empire. He had not broken it. Mehmed assembled an army that contemporaries compared to the force that had conquered Constantinople. Professional janissaries, feudal cavalry, mounted archers, pikemen, 120 cannon, engineers, a river fleet of 25 triremes and 150 smaller vessels, all moving north. Riding with the Ottoman army was Vlad's younger brother, Radu, commanding 4,000 horsemen, the boy who had adapted where Vlad had resisted, Mehmed's chosen replacement for the Wallachian throne. Against this, Vlad had roughly 30,000 men, mostly peasant levies, no artillery, no allies. Matthias Corvinus had promised support and sent nothing. Vlad reportedly told his troops, "It would be better that those who think of death should not follow me. His strategy was devastation, not of the enemy, but of his own country. As the Ottomans advanced, they found a land deliberately destroyed by its own ruler, wells poisoned, crops burned, livestock driven into the mountains, villages emptied, rivers diverted to flood the roads, hidden pits swallowed horses and men without warning. From the forests, Wallachian raiders struck at unpredictable intervals, hitting flanks, killing foragers, vanishing before the Janissaries could respond. Vlad also sent plague carriers into Ottoman supply lines. Soldiers began dying not from swords, but from fever and swollen glands. For 7 days, Mehmed advanced through emptiness. No food, no water fit to drink, no enemy to fight. Only the occasional eruption of violence from the trees, followed by silence. On the night of June 17, Vlad stopped running. The Ottoman camp lay spread across the plain south of Târgoviște. Mehmed had ordered every soldier to remain inside his tent after dark. The camp was silent. 3 hours after sunset, Vlad's cavalry emerged from the forest. They came with torches and bugles, striking from multiple directions. The Wallachians cut through tent lines, slashing canvas, killing men crawling out of sleep. Vlad led the central column toward the Sultan's pavilion. He had entered the camp earlier that evening, disguised as a Turkish soldier, walking freely through enemy lines to locate Mehmed's position. The charge overran the Asian Sipahi cavalry and punched deep into the center. For perhaps an hour, the possibility of killing the most powerful man in the Islamic world was real. But in the smoke and chaos, Vlad hit the wrong tent, the pavilion of the Grand Viziers, not the Sultan. Mehmed's Janissary guard held. The chance vanished. The fighting lasted until 4 in the morning. A Wallachian veteran later told a papal legate that the Sultan, shaken and disoriented, ordered the camp abandoned and fled south. He would have continued in this way, the veteran said, had he not been reprimanded by his friends and brought back almost against his will. Mehmed regrouped. He was the conqueror. He would not be turned back. He marched on Târgoviște. He found the gates open, the city empty. Vlad had withdrawn into the mountains. But along the road outside the walls, the Ottoman army encountered something no victory could erase. A forest of stakes, thousands of bodies, Ottoman soldiers and Bulgarian prisoners from Vlad's winter campaign, impaled on sharpened poles of varying heights, arranged in rows. Some still recognizable, others reduced to bone and leather. The smell reached the column long before the sight did. At the top of the tallest stake was the rotting corpse of Hamza Pasha, placed above all others to honor his rank, even in death. Chalkakandals recorded the Sultan's response. Mehmed, who had watched Constantinople burn, who was not easily shaken, said, "It is not possible to deprive of his country a man who had done such great deeds, who had such a diabolical understanding of how to govern his realm and its people. A man who had done such things was worth much." The following day, the Sultan turned south. Mehmed the Conqueror was leaving Wallachia, not because he had lost, but because the cost of holding this land exceeded what even an empire was willing to pay. The forest of stakes had done what 30,000 peasants could not. It had made victory feel like a trap. But Vlad's war was not won. It was entering its cruelest phase. Mehmed had left behind something more dangerous than an army: Radu. Vlad's brother rode through the countryside with a simple offer to every boyar and every exhausted soldier: Submit to me, and the war ends. The Ottomans go home. All you have to do is abandon my brother." It worked. The boyars switched sides. Soldiers deserted in growing numbers. Radu offered what Vlad never could: peace, normalcy, a return to managed submission. Vlad watched his country dissolve beneath him, not from Ottoman swords, but from Ottoman diplomacy. His own brother, speaking the language of exhaustion to a people who had nothing left to burn. By late 1462, Vlad was out of men, out of land, and out of options. He rode north to meet King Matthias Corvinus, expecting an army. He got a prison cell. Matthias Corvinus had a problem, and Vlad Dracula was the solution, just not in the way Vlad expected. For years, the Hungarian king had been collecting money from the Pope for a crusade against the Ottomans. The funds were substantial. The crusade was non-existent. Corvinus had been spending the money on domestic politics and the general maintenance of a kingdom with more pressing concerns than liberating the Balkans. Then Vlad crossed the Danube and slaughtered 23,000 people. Suddenly, the crusade question was no longer abstract. A Wallachian prince was doing what Corvinus had been paid to do, with a ferocity that made the Hungarian king look timid. If Corvinus joined forces with Vlad, he would be expected to actually fight. If he did nothing, he would have to explain where the money went. Corvinus chose a third option. He arrested Vlad. The pretext was a set of letters, allegedly written by Vlad to the Sultan, offering to switch sides. Most modern historians believe they were forgeries. The timing was too convenient, the motive too transparent. But Corvinus presented Vlad to the papal envoys not as a crusading hero, but a treacherous psychopath, a man so cruel that imprisoning him was an act of Christian responsibility. The German pamphlets helped. Stories of Vlad's atrocities had been circulating through Transylvania for years, and Corvinus amplified them. Yesterday's crusader became today's monster, and the king who betrayed him became the responsible adult in the room. Vlad was taken to Visegrad, a fortress on the Danube north of Buda. He would remain a prisoner for 12 years. Almost nothing is known about his daily life during imprisonment. The most famous anecdote comes from Gabriele Rangone, the bishop of Eger, who reported that Vlad caught mice and birds in his cell, cut them apart, and mounted the pieces on tiny wooden sticks, miniature impalements performed in captivity with the same precision he had applied at Târgoviște. The story may be true. It may be propaganda. What it reveals, regardless of accuracy, is that by the 1460s, Vlad had ceased to be a person in the European imagination and had become a type, the tyrant as spectacle. And this transformation was happening in a revolutionary medium. The German-language pamphlets about Vlad, printed between the 1460s and 1480s, were among the earliest bestsellers produced by the printing press. Gutenberg had published his Bible in 1455. Within a decade, printers discovered that stories of exotic cruelty sold faster than scripture. The pamphlets mixed documented events with invention, and the numbers were consistently inflated by roughly a factor of 10. Where firmer sources show 41 Saxon merchants impaled, the pamphlets reported 600. The lifetime total of Vlad's impalements, once placed in the tens of thousands, was probably just over 2,000. 2,000 people on sharpened stakes, still a horror, but not the work of a uniquely deranged mind operating outside the norms of his time. Impalement was practiced by Ottomans, Hungarians, and various Balkan rulers. Vlad's distinction was the consistency and the theatricality. He understood that violence is most effective when it is performed. The pamphlets served everyone's interests except Vlad's. For Corvinus, they justified imprisonment and deflected questions about crusade funds. For the Saxons, they were revenge. For the Ottoman court, they confirmed Wallachia was better off under Radu. The deeper question, one the pamphlets never asked, was whether Vlad's cruelty was madness or method. Wallachia had no natural defenses, no reliable allies, and an internal politics driven by boyars whose loyalty expired the moment a stronger claimant appeared. A voivode who ruled by consensus would be deposed in months. A voivode who ruled by moderate force would be outmaneuvered by the next rival with foreign backing. Vlad chose maximum force. The stakes were not expressions of sadism. They were the only defense system a small, poor, landlocked principality could build without walls or standing armies. This does not make them moral, but it makes them legible, not as the random output of a diseased mind, but as the product of an impossible situation.
The irony is that fear eventually betrayed him too. It was fear of Vlad that drove the boyars to Radu. It was fear of Vlad that gave Corvinus the excuse to lock him away. The weapon worked until it didn't, and when it stopped, there was nothing underneath. Vlad's imprisonment softened gradually. By the early 1470s, he was no longer confined to a cell, but living under house arrest in the Hungarian court. He converted to Roman Catholicism, whether by conviction or political requirement is unclear. He married a relative of Corvinus, a woman named Justina Siliagi, and had at least one son. For a man who had spent his entire adult life either fighting or being fought over, the years of house arrest must have been a strange kind of limbo. He attended court functions. He observed Hungarian politics at close range, the alliances, the betrayals, the careful management of power that Corvinus practiced with far more subtlety than Vlad had ever employed. Whether he learned from this, whether captivity taught him anything besides patience, the record does not say. But the man who walked out of Visegrad in 1475 was not the same man who had walked in. 12 years will do that, even someone built for war. The world outside had changed. Radu, the brother who had replaced him, was dead, succumbing to illness in 1475 after years of compliant Ottoman-backed rule. The throne had passed to Basarab the Elder, another entry in Wallachia's endless rotation of voivodes. The Ottoman threat remained as heavy as ever, and in Moldavia, Stephen III, Vlad's cousin, and one of the few genuinely capable rulers in the region, was fighting a war against Mehmed that he could not sustain alone. Stephen wrote to Corvinus and requested Vlad's release. The logic was military and urgent. Stephen needed a proven commander on Wallachia's throne, someone the Ottomans already feared, someone who could hold the Danube line while Moldavia defended its own borders. Corvinus, whose political calculations had shifted considerably over 12 years, agreed. In the summer of 1475, Vlad Dracula walked out of captivity. He was somewhere in his mid-40s. He had spent nearly a third of his life as a prisoner. His hair was thinner, his body older, and the world he returned to was not the one he had left. But he could still fight. That much became clear almost immediately. Corvinus sent him to Bosnia in early 1476, commanding a mixed force of Hungarian troops in a campaign against Ottoman-held territory. The towns of Szabadka and Srebrenica were conquered and looted. The details of Vlad's performance are sparse in the historical record, but the fact that Corvinus trusted him with independent command and that the campaign succeeded tells its own story. Whatever prison had taken from Vlad, it had not taken the thing that made him dangerous. Reports from the Bosnian campaign also suggest that Vlad had not abandoned his signature methods. According to some accounts, captured Ottoman soldiers were impaled in the field, a smaller echo of the forests at Târgoviște, performed not in Wallachia but on foreign soil, as if to announce to anyone watching, the Impaler is back.
Whether Corvinus approved of these methods or simply found them useful is an open question. What mattered was the result. By the autumn of 1476, Vlad had proven himself functional, effective, and still terrifying enough to serve as a credible threat on the Wallachian throne. In November, with Hungarian and Moldavian support, he invaded Wallachia for the third and final time. Basarab the Elder fled without a major battle. Vlad entered Târgoviște, the city of his court, his purges, and his stakes, and sat on the throne once more. He was home. He had outlasted prison, outlasted his brother, outlasted a dozen rivals. The boy who had been traded as a hostage at 11 had clawed his way back to the one thing he had spent his entire life trying to hold. It would last weeks. There is a particular kind of internet argument that never ends. It surfaces in Reddit threads, YouTube comment sections, and history forums with reliable regularity. Was Vlad the Impaler a hero or a villain? The answers split predictably. Romanians defend him, Western Europeans condemn him. Americans compare him to other historical figures they half remember from school. Someone inevitably brings up the vampire. Someone else insists the Ottoman Empire deserved what it got. A third person posts a meme. The thread devolves, recovers, devolves again. But underneath the noise, the argument reveals something genuine. 500 years after his death, Vlad Dracula still provokes a reaction that most medieval rulers cannot. People who know nothing about Wallachian politics or 15th-century Balkan geopolitics have an opinion about him. They feel something: disgust, fascination, grudging respect, horror, and they want to say it out loud. He is not a figure people study with detachment. He is a figure people argue about, and the argument is always the same one: how much cruelty is justified when survival is at stake? It is a question with no clean answer, which is exactly why 5 centuries later we are still asking it. The details of Vlad's death are, like so much of his life, disputed. Sometime in late December 1476 or early January 1477, Basarab the Elder returned with Ottoman reinforcements. A battle was fought near the monastery of Snagov in the forests south of Târgoviște. One account claims Vlad won the battle, then rode to a hilltop to observe the retreat, and his own men, mistaking him for a Turkish officer, attacked. He killed 5 assailants before being overwhelmed. Another account simply states he fell in battle, outnumbered and outmaneuvered one final time. His head was severed and sent to Constantinople, preserved in honey and displayed on a stake outside the palace. The symmetry was deliberate. The impaler impaled. The man who had mounted thousands on sharpened wood was himself reduced to a trophy in the city he had dreamed of threatening. His body was reportedly buried at Snagov Monastery on an island in a lake north of Bucharest. When archaeologists excavated the grave in 1931, they found it empty. A nearby dig uncovered a headless skeleton wrapped in silk and brocade, clothing consistent with a 15th-century Wallachian nobleman. Whether it is Vlad remains unconfirmed. Even in death, he is difficult to pin down. What Vlad left behind was not a dynasty. His son, Minya, later known as Minya the Evil, a nickname that suggests the apple did not fall far,
would briefly rule Wallachia decades later, but the Draculesht line never consolidated lasting power. The throne returned to the same carousel of rival claimants, foreign-backed coups, and boyar intrigues that had defined Wallachia before Vlad was born. In a sense, this was his most damning failure. He had spent his entire reign trying to break the system, the cycle of betrayal, the revolving throne, the submission to foreign empires. He used the most extreme methods available to any ruler of his era, and the system absorbed his violence, waited him out, and resumed the moment he was gone. The stakes came down, the boyars came back, the Ottomans collected their tribute. Wallachia went on as if Vlad had been a fever, intense, terrifying, and temporary. And yet, something had changed, even if it was invisible at the time. The memory of a ruler who had refused to submit, who had made an empire flinch, settled into the soil of Romanian identity like a seed that would not germinate for centuries. For 3 centuries, Vlad existed in 2 separate traditions. In the German-speaking world, he was the blood-drinking tyrant of the pamphlets, a cautionary tale reprinted and embellished long after anyone remembered the politics of 15th-century Wallachia. In Romania, he was something entirely different, a harsh but just ruler who punished the corrupt, protected the common people, and stood alone against an empire. The golden cup at the fountain, the sultan who turned back, not a monster, but a necessary man. These 2 strands coexisted for centuries without converging. Then, in 1897, an Irish theater manager changed everything. Bram Stoker never visited Romania. His knowledge of Vlad came from a single book found in a library where he encountered the name Dracula and a note that it meant devil in the local language. That was enough. His novel borrowed almost nothing from the historical Vlad beyond the name and the Transylvanian setting. Count Dracula is not Vlad kept alive by vampirism. He is a fictional creation built from folklore and Victorian anxieties. But the name did its work. Once the novel was published, once Bela Lugosi put on the cape in 1931, the name fused permanently with the vampire myth. The word completed a full migration, from son of the dragon, a mark of chivalric honor, to son of the devil, a folk etymology, to the name of fiction's most famous monster. In modern Romania, Vlad Tepes occupies a complicated but largely positive place. His portrait appears in textbooks. The ruins of Poniari Castle are a national landmark. Politicians invoke his name when arguing for sovereignty. The Romanian reading is not naive. Romanians know about the impalements, but the framing is different. In a country defined by centuries of foreign domination, Ottoman, Austro-Hungarian, Soviet, Vlad represents something rare, a leader who said no, who refused to be a vassal, who fought, however brutally, for the idea that a small nation has the right to exist. This is not a comfortable legacy. It requires holding 2 truths at once: that Vlad committed acts of extraordinary cruelty, and that he did so in defense of a people who had no other defender, the hero and the monster, the son of the dragon and the son of the devil. History does not resolve this contradiction, it simply preserves it. And perhaps that is the most honest conclusion. He responded to an impossible world with a brutality that shocked even his contemporaries. He impaled thousands. He terrorized his own people into obedience. He made his country so dangerous to invade that the greatest military power on earth decided it was not worth the cost. And then the world moved on. His brother replaced him. His allies imprisoned him. His country returned to the same cycle that had existed before he was born. What survived was the name, carried forward not by historians but a novelist who needed something that sounded frightening. The real Vlad, the hostage prince, the Impaler, the man who almost killed a sultan in his sleep, was absorbed into a fiction so total that recovering him requires deliberate effort. But he is there, underneath the cape and the fangs. A boy in an Ottoman fortress, watching men die on sharpened wood, learning the lesson that would define his life, that power is not given, it is taken, and the price of taking it is becoming something the world will never forgive. 500 years later, his head is still missing, his grave is still uncertain, and his name, the one his father earned by joining an order of Christian knights, belongs to a vampire. The dragon's son became the devil's legend, and the legend, unlike the man, will never die.